The Ghana Investment Compendium is a pilot project of a larger project to ensure that there's accurate data about the ecosystem and how it's evolving. One of the things we've learned in the last 3 years is how important data is to decision making. So for example, we've been working with pension funds around unlocking capital, and they ask questions like, what is the performance of venture capital and private equity? How are SMEs actually doing? Data and the lack of it can be a major constraint. It's a constraint especially for people who are not in the middle of the financing ecosystem. For example, someone in international development designing a program and trying to find points of connection. And so the more we can shed light on the ecosystem, how it's connected, who's working with who, and how it's evolving, the more our ecosystem can thrive. And so we began a project with the UNRCO to create this pilot guide. It's a larger project because data is only as useful as the last update. And so it's a project we want to do as a yearly project and would like to invite all of you in the room to join us to keep this information up to date. You can download the first edition that walks you through who's supplying capital, who's demanding for capital, who are the financial intermediaries, who are the market builders, the government and policy institutions, government agencies that are working in various roles. And hopefully this will help various actors, businesses who are looking for funding, international development organizations looking to understand how everything fits together. When Charles joins us, he's a little delayed, and he will also share some reflections along with his remarks on the compendium and on the initiatives that the UN are running to build a thriving ecosystem. So you can go to the QR code and download the compendium.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and I think it's a formal event, but it's also pretty much a relaxed environment in which the key actors are talking. It's a great privilege for me to be here to deliver remarks at this 2024 Ghana Impact Summit. And of course, on behalf of the United Nations team, I join my previous speakers to extend warm welcomes to all of you, and particularly to the panel who made some very, very interesting points. The theme of this year's summit, Building Resilient Ecosystems for a Thriving Impact Economy, resonates deeply with us at the United Nations and our mission to really promote sustainable and inclusive development and ensure that no one is left behind. And thank you for your question about rural women. It resonates profoundly with the global agenda on sustainable development, and it underscores the imperatives for robust systems that foster economic growth while ensuring social equity and environmental sustainability. I see in the crowd quite an interesting set of dynamic and diverse stakeholders. And indeed, I was super impressed, Amma, with the number of logos around here, which suggests really that you are working on this key theme that has come through everything around collaboration. Your presence here is important and will really enable the dialogue to succeed. So a special thanks to Impact Investing Ghana, UN, Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, RISA, FCDO, and other valuable partners who contribute to support this process. The Ghana Impact Summit is more than just a meeting. It's a movement, a platform where capital suppliers, policymakers, enterprise support organizations, market builders converge to share insights, celebrate success and lessons, and chart a course for the future. The Sustainable Development SDG stocktake last year basically identified that unless we get sustainable finance in the system, and it's not just for sustainable finance for social development, but for economic growth, we are on a heading to nowhere. And as part of those efforts, the UN really supports at the global level a range of issues that really focus on sustainable finance and the partnerships, and a recognition that unless the private sector is really brought to the table in a significant way, we're unlikely to have the success that we need. We see the Ghana Impact Summit as providing the opportunity for those strategic partnerships to dialogue and influence policy and regulatory reform, and I know you've already spoken a lot about this, identify opportunity areas to develop pipelines for bankable projects. And so my sister talking about you can find finance, but if you don't connect it to bankable projects, then it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But also the deal rooms, where these deals are actually done with the multiple stakeholders who need to come together. And again, this whole business of the capacity and the skills that are needed to actually enable this to happen. This is what the UN is calling the engine rooms for change: policy, pipeline, deal room, and capacity. If these engine rooms are unlocked, then everything we're doing will be really important. And effectively, we have identified 6 core areas where the UN will be putting its weight, mainly behind the government, but increasingly with the private sector to support that. And already some of that has come through. The first is food systems. Food systems are critical, and food systems isn't just about production, it's about value addition, and it's about trading. And so when we join production from the rural areas to the value addition and aggregation that takes place, and then put that on the market through the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we will see that ecosystem that will force governments to actually respond in terms of policy, because the engine will have left the station. But access to energy and its affordability is equally critical, and the investments required in that area, principally by governments, but also with private sector investment, is key and significant if we're to succeed in creating the engine that will allow industrialization to happen. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were all at the Three Eyes Summit, which was really looking at digital. Indeed, it is the digital of everything, and really leveraging that digital space, whether it's at infrastructure level or it's really around the MSMEs and startups that are growing and coming out of this space, extremely important, and being able to thread and connect to that, as well as to education and jobs. These are going to be key, while ensuring that we're engaged with ensuring that we protect our planet and that what we do gradually takes us towards net zero. And I say gradually because the assumption that we will jump straight from where we are on this continent to net zero is unreal, and part of the policy pushback is to negotiate the space to be able to breathe and grow and get to that net zero. Against this backdrop, the UN is preparing to support member states to take stock of bold actions, and really, as I've said, at the heart of that will be sustainable development and sustainable finance and partnerships and involving the private sector. And this will build already off the work of the Global Compact, but also the Global Africa Business Initiative, Gabi, where we hope that these kinds of conversations get to the global stage and we find the right resources. Today's rapidly changing world, resilience is not just a desirable trait, but a necessary one. COVID-19, climate change, geopolitical tensions, all underscore the fragility of our interconnected system. Building a resilient ecosystem means creating an environment where economic activity can thrive despite these challenges, ultimately leading to more inclusive and sustainable development. Resilient ecosystems are foundational to a thriving impact economy. The ecosystem encompasses not just natural environment, but the social and economic systems that support human well-being. These are characterized by the ability to absorb shocks, adapt to changing conditions, transform the ways that enhance sustainability and equity. Let us emphasize the need for a resilient ecosystem to withstand all these global challenges, and that means it needs to be built locally, fundamentally, and built almost in every context. And we welcome and congratulate and applaud all the partners who are doing that here. In Ghana, the journey towards building that is multidimensional, as we have heard this morning. It includes sustainable agricultural practices that protect biodiversity while enhancing food security, renewable energy projects that reduce carbon footprints and promote affordable energy access, and inclusive economic policies that ensure all segments of society can participate. A word on innovation. Innovation and collaboration, as you've heard, are really critical to this. We need to leverage the technology to create smart, sustainable solutions that can withstand and adapt. And already we're struggling, and it feels like we're behind the curve on digital. And so really, some of the investments that need to be made in that space are absolutely critical. The intellectual property and ownership and IP that goes with this, if we lose that, we will have lost even that race. Equally important is fostering partnerships between governments. One of the speakers was saying government must act and create some of the ecosystem infrastructure that will then enable investors to come to the table. And so really pushing on big policies like Ghana's Planting for Food and Jobs 2.0, which has a vision similar to what the moderator was describing, of creating an infrastructural base around which individual entrepreneurs can thrive. We must double down on these and make sure that we hold government accountable to delivering them. We must also look at the fact that there are many people who are sitting in the early stage. And so early stage investing for people who have ideas to take those forward, really important. And it's really great to hear Fidelity Bank saying, we're accepting new forms of validation that enable us to be able to assess people who traditionally would not meet the conditions. And really the role of blended finance in this future and the private sector cannot be overemphasized. We are doing a lot of work, and I'm sure I have a couple of colleagues who will be in the room who will talk about this, particularly in the area of working with MSMEs and creating the space around digital for engagement. And we have a new $15 million program which is just set to kick off. We've talked about financing here, and I know that there are a number of you engaged in that. The truth is, if you listen to the figures that the government of Ghana sets out, no amount of money will be enough. We need billions to achieve this. And so towards this end, we're also collaborating with Stanbic Bank and a range of partners, including GIPC, to arrange for a fund of funds that will additionally bring a $250 million into the MSME space. This will really help some of the fund management systems to grow, and we're really focused on ensuring that those fund systems are Ghanaian systems, not just global systems, that really ensure that effectively we are maturing the capital market here and creating the opportunity, building off some of the work that the Ghana Venture Capital Association is doing to really leverage in finance from different areas. And so yes, it is competition, but it's also collaboration. So it's actually cooperation that will be needed. To further our private sector partnerships towards building resilience, we are collaborating with Impact Investing Ghana to really put together this compendium, because it's really a confusing space. And a lot of people who join this space actually don't have the skills and the knowledge. And if I take myself, generalist as I am, if you start to talk all the big English, then gradually it goes above and above my head. And so we're collaborating, and I know that earlier in the morning, Amma talked about the investment compendium, which we are launching together to really see how we create a roadmap for people who are starting fresh to have the confidence to actually engage in this space, and will serve as a concise tool encompassing investment policies, programs, regulators, investors, key actors, and give people the resource to feel confident to actually engage in the space. And as I've mentioned earlier, we are talking about a real digital program that will work to create a conducive e-commerce environment implemented by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, but working very much with private entrepreneurs, a digital gateway that will serve as a one-stop shop for MSMEs, and digital skills to navigate business and finance, as well as digital financial services implemented with the Bank of Ghana and development finance institutions, DFIs. So we reaffirm our commitment to this and really see ourselves as sitting at the background. You are actually the key people in the room who need to make this happen, and we are here to support you. And so on that note, I want to wish you all the best with this particular dialogue. To point out, if you haven't already, I hope it's still happening, that there will be a big deal room later in the year, and I'm sure Amma will talk about it. But to say, to conclude where you were, that actually we have to take all this talk to action, and we have to bring all the different things we're doing together. I thank you, and I wish you the very best for your deliberations today.